Hi, I'm Jeff Holden. Welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast Network. Our purpose and passion is to highlight a nonprofit organization in each weekly episode, giving that organization an opportunity to tell their story in their words to better inform and educate the respective communities they serve, as well as provide one more tool for them to share their message to constituents and donors. Our goal is to help build stronger communities through shared voices and to both encourage and support the growth of local nonprofit organizations through podcasting. Thanks to our founding partners for their foresight in helping us transform the way conversations start. CapTrust, fiduciary advice for endowments and foundations. Runyon Saltzman Incorporated, RSE, marketing, advertising, and public relations creating integrated communications committed to improving lives. And Western Health Advantage, a full-service healthcare plan for individuals, employer groups, and families. Did you notice something different at the start of this episode? It wasn't our usual intro. And while today's overture isn't performed by our guest organization, it offers a small taste of what we're about to explore. The arts are more than just entertainment. They're a reflection of our city's vitality, a marker of its cultural depth, and some might say a symbol of its sophistication. But what do the arts truly mean to a community, and how do they shape its identity? Today I'm joined by Giuliano Kornberg, CEO of the Sacramento Philharmonic and Opera. He has a fascinating personal journey that led him to this role, but more importantly, he's at the forefront of an inspiring collaboration, one that has united the Philharmonic and Opera to elevate the arts for the greater good of our city. If you're like me, you may find yourself deeply moved by a performance, captivated by the sounds, yet not entirely sure of the nuances of what you're experiencing. In this conversation, we take the stage to better understand the impact, the success, and the ongoing support behind Sacramento's Philharmonic and Opera. A bit allegro at times, with some crescendo, occasionally staccato, but a mostly legato conversation. Let's begin. Giuliano Kornberg, welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast Network.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jeff. Really excited to be here.
And same here to learn about something that I really am not all that familiar with. Before we get started,
Sure.
I want to read something that came off the website because I think it's really poignant about the Philharmonic.
Yeah, great.
Unique and inspiring, the Sacramento Philharmonic and Opera has reclaimed its place as one of the region's leading performing arts organizations. In the past 7 years, the SP&O has made tremendous artistic, community, and fiscal strides through a business model that has solidly moved from one of instability to stability. Today, the SP&O serves as a vibrant cultural community asset, one that's shaped by Sacramento, whose offerings are uniquely of Sacramento, and whose vision for the future is designed for Sacramento. The SP&O continues its stellar concerts, operas, and community engagement programs that bring the passion of classical music to schools, hospitals, shelters, and more.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a ton
Right.
of integration.
Expansive, yeah.
It touches on everything right in 2 paragraphs.
Right.
And I want to unpack those a little bit today.
Sure.
Because people don't really know the organization if they don't know the organization.
Right.
And it starts with the very first thing, as I was even explaining, I'm excited to have you in
Yeah.
because you're the first arts organization of this significance and caliber that we've had in.
Oh, very cool.
And people were like, what is the
What is that?
Philharmonic?
Right,
What is
exactly.
the Philharmonic? What is that? I mean, and then you mentioned, well, opera and orchestra. Can you explain that for us just so we really get a grasp of what Philharmonic is?
Yeah, who we are as an organization.
Yes.
Well, again, thank you very much for having me. It's always fun to kind of share, what the Philharmonic and Opera is doing and what we're up to and the programs that we have and the sort of impact that we can have in the Sacramento region. When I hear kind of what the history is and kind of what the vision is, I mean, really, like a lot of that boils down, I think, to authenticity and trying to be, through our various programs and concerts and initiatives, like everything that we do, we try to have it make sense for Sacramento because we are the Sacramento Philharmonic and Opera. Our legal name actually is the Sacramento Region Performing Arts Alliance, but we do business as the Sacramento Philharmonic and Opera. We're not the San Francisco Philharmonic and Opera. We're not the Oakland Philharmonic. They have great organizations too for those communities, but we are this community's professional symphonic or philharmonic and opera organization. So I think having us continue to make sure that what we do makes sense for the people that live in Sacramento, for the kind of culture that Sacramento has and is trying to continue to grow. I think it's really important to really, for me and for us, to remember that authenticity piece. So it's fun to hear that and read that. I don't read that very often, but it's certainly fun, in this sort of context to hear that. So generally speaking, like a philharmonic or a symphony or an orchestra, it's all the same. They're just different words for the same thing, which is an orchestra, performing. And of course, opera, think of like the Magic Flute by Mozart or, Madame Butterfly or La Boheme, like those sorts of, operatic productions. We are emerged.
Phantom
of the Opera?
The opera?
Yeah, that's a little more Broadway, but certainly like that has kind of all the bells and whistles of sets and costumes and singing and an orchestra playing. So we are one of the few organizations in the country that are merged. So we're both the Philharmonic and the Opera Company here in Sacramento. So we do both. We do both art forms. We do a number of Philharmonic concerts every year or every season. We do a couple of opera performances every year. I know Utah has a similar model. They're the Symphony and Opera. Dayton actually has the ballet also. They call that the Dayton Performing Arts Alliance. I believe Chattanooga is a kind of a merged Chattanooga Symphony and Opera too, although I'm not really sure how much the opera is playing. Mm-hmm. So we really are, the Sacramento Philharmonic and Opera really is one of the few organizations that has this model. So simply put, we do both orchestral and operatic programming, number of concerts, working with singers in the opera, of course, working with, super high-level soloists and guest conductors for the orchestra concerts, all played by musicians of the Philharmonic and Opera. And I think it is kind of cool, as I think about just what makes us unique in a place like Sacramento. I think it is kind of a cool fact that Sacramento can say, hey, for like one of the premier performing arts groups, it has an organization that is both, and that is one of just a very, very small handful of places in the country like that. So I think it's kind of a fun little calling card for the region.
Well, and I love that novelty of Sacramento having that.
Yeah.
Especially as we see this influx of people from Los Angeles, this influx of people from the Bay Area who have familiarity, but theirs would be individual.
Right. Yeah,
and
totally.
Now they see it a little bit differently. And this happened about 11, 12 years ago, correct? Where you actually blended the two organizations?
Yeah, it happened in 2013. Mergers are no joke. Like there was a lot of, and I wasn't around at the time, but there was a lot of hard work and strategic thinking and just things that had to happen to really kind of get this organization going.
And so that's from that instability to stability.
Yeah, so I would say, in terms of the arc of kind of who we are, yes, we merged in 2013. It was probably around, halfway through 2015 where, the organization maybe started to maybe understand like what it was to be a merged organization. And then from 16 through, March of 2020, like we were doing pretty well, selling more tickets, raising more money, building more of a profile. The 18-19 season was really successful. We had about, I think it was 1,350 subscribers, and the artistry was really good. Then the Performing Arts Center shut down for what we thought was a year to get that renovated, which was exciting. So we played around
COVID too.
Well, yeah, so we played around a couple different venues, until March of 2020, and then everything stopped, obviously, right? But, I think for us, and I can't really speak for other arts organizations, but it generally seems that in Sacramento, more people were a little more quick to come back kind of post-COVID. I talked to, other organizations just around the country, really, who are still having like a hard time getting back to kind of pre-pandemic levels of attendance and support. Whereas, we're off and running in terms of the artists we can bring, the talent that we can bring, the music that we the sort of music that we play, who's coming, who's supporting. So, obviously the pandemic happened. But I think, with what we've done since then to try to raise the profile and just kind of grow as an organization, we've done a lot of really cool things well, which is certainly exciting.
Well, it's great to hear that Sacramento has embraced it so quickly, out of COVID so quickly, that you didn't have this big, long lag like some of these other communities. I think that's a statement in itself.
Well, and I think, certainly I think a lot of people were interested to get back to, the newly renovated Safe Credit Union Performing Arts Center. I think that was a plus that we, got to talk about and get people excited about. But yeah, for whatever reason, which is great for us, people that I talk to anyway, like really love this organization and want to see it succeed and, want to help see it succeed. And certainly, like especially in the 21-22 season, like right after COVID, like, there was certainly still some hesitation to come back. But generally since that point, now we have about 1,250 subscribers, which is right there, what it was in 18-19. We've grown as an organization. We're like a $3.5 million budget now. A few years ago, we were like a $2 million organization. And we think that's like sustaining with the expense model and the revenue model. But really, like everything that we do is because we have a really supportive community. And of course, we have really amazing musicians who live here and who want to come here to perform, what I consider some of the best music ever written. So it's a lot of fun because there's a lot of people kind of behind us and who are supportive of us doing this work.
2 questions. This is a little offshoot from the questions we spoke about.
Sure.
I'm sitting here looking at a young man.
Yeah.
Not the typical perception of what you would think would be somebody running the Philharmonic or an orchestra or the opera. What got you into this? How did you end up here?
How did I get here? Yeah. So I came to California for school. I went to Stanford for undergrad and grad school. Loved playing percussion. Got my music degree as an undergrad in percussion performance. Played in the orchestra and played in the wind ensemble and did all sorts of stuff. But really one of my favorite things to do in college was to play in the orchestra. Playing timpani and percussion for Beethoven and Mahler and Sibelius and Verdi, and just like being able to play all this really fun music. So I've always loved classical music, even before that, playing piano, playing guitar, playing percussion kind of middle school and high school. I've always loved music. I always loved playing music. Always loved classical music. Ended up getting my grad degree in music technology, which was a fun kind of year pivot. Recording, science of sound, acoustics, psychoacoustics, things like that. But as I was going through my grad degree, I really realized that, okay, I love classical music. And if there's some other thing in the classical music world that I could do, great. And it was about, springtime, like March or April of my grad school year, where I learned by talking to people, there's this whole kind of back end apparatus, working at an orchestra or opera company who works to put the concerts on, not necessarily plays in the concerts, fundraising, marketing, operations, all the stuff that goes into producing this sort of thing as opposed to playing it. And once I realized that was a thing, I'm like, ooh, this is pretty cool. So I ended up getting a job in San Francisco at the opera for like a summer job. Ended up meeting my, at the time, boss. Now she's the CEO of the Vegas Philharmonic, Alice, also from Minnesota. She's from Hopkins, funny enough. So we talked and got to know each other. And, I learned about this fundraising job opening in Sacramento and thought, if this works out, this could be kind of cool. So I moved here to work for the Philharmonic and Opera in September of 16, and then did fundraising exclusively for about 3.5 or 4 years, ad marketing for a year. Was designated as the next executive director in October of 21 and started in February 22. And like, it's a big job. It's a hard job. A lot of learning.
Yes, it is.
Still happens and certainly happened at the time. But I think what was nice for me anyway is that I had kind of a general idea of how the organization at the macro level functioned. There was obviously a lot to learn on like the micro, like, who the musicians are and what the board is, or like what the players on the board are and kind of how we produce concerts and what are the, challenges and opportunities, and just my knowledge and skill set, knowledge base and skill set grew. But I do think for me, and I guess I'll say the organization, it was helpful, that I had like just years of just kind of coming up in the organization to kind of know, for the most part, how things went, where things were going, kind of just what the vibe of the group was. And then, since then, it's just been like trying to learn as much as possible, go through, some challenging things like, negotiating with the musicians union, which is really important because we want musicians, to feel like they're, well taken care of and supported. And we also have like a financial obligation to make sure that we, don't spend too much and make the money that we need to. Yeah, exactly. Working to, bring Ari as our main conductor, as our principal conductor, that was work. Again, it's not like coming back from COVID was easy, so that was a challenge. Certainly getting opera to a place that, was really good, I would say, and everybody can agree with. So there certainly were lots of challenging things. But I do think, again, personally speaking, I can say that it was really helpful to have worked in this place for probably about 4.5 or 5 years before I came the executive director, because I wasn't coming in completely, new. I knew donors. I knew kind of what the successes were. I knew what the challenges were. And it's been fun. Again, it's a lot of hard work. But I do think we have, some really nice momentum in terms of artistic quality and the types of people we're bringing and just the revenue that goes along with the expenses. And I think we're a really legitimate organization, which is great.
Well, what I like, too, is that you have the familiarity from the artistic side, so you can relate to the performers. You have an understanding. You've been there.
Yeah,
right. You can read the music they're reading, and I mean that in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
You have an empathic understanding of what the situation is for what they have to go through.
Right.
So I think that really draws some nice correlations in terms of leadership. because they can't come to you. Well,
Yeah.
you don't have a clue. Yeah, you do have a clue.
Well, and I mean, listen, like without the musicians, like we don't exist, you
Yes.
know? And you know, like everybody else, like sometimes, you know, there are good days and sometimes there are bad days, obviously. But, you know, we've really tried to be as like hospitable and accommodating as possible because, you know, we know like when our musicians play in Sacramento, they also play in Folsom, Modesto, Oakland, Stockton, you know, Berkeley, San Francisco, some as far as Monterey and Santa Cruz. So they're in like their car a lot, driving around to different gigs. So when they come to Sacramento or if they live here and they perform with us, like we really want to make sure that like they feel as good as possible. Because you know, like it can be tough, right? Going from gig to gig. So you know, whether it's homestays or snacks or just like a good, you know, well thought out program or a conductor they really enjoy working with, or you know, we have in January this amazing violin player coming. It's not very often that we get to have talent like that, so that's certainly a draw too. So we try to make it kind of comprehensively, just as enjoyable of a time as possible. In recognition and appreciation of it's really hard to have a philharmonic and an opera both without like a musician base.
Yes.
And I think that's been something that's really helped us be successful because there are other places who kind of lose sight of that. But from the board and the staff perspective, like we haven't. And it can be tough sometimes, certainly. But really making sure that the talent and the musicians or the talent who is the musicians feel, you know, supported and that we care. That's a really big deal that we've tried to make sure we do all the time.
Well, it looks like obviously that is present, as well as the fact that they've got a wonderful new facility to play in too.
Yeah.
And I'm sure,
sure.
that bodes well for any talent that's coming. It's like when you have the new arena for basketball, that players like to come. When you have
Right.
a new facility for the musicians, wow.
Yeah. Well, and again, we're lucky enough that, you know, pretty quickly a lot of people wanted to come back. I mean, you know, even the first couple years, like in 16, 17, you know, we were pretty consistently selling out, and that's generally continued. So, you know, and it just feels different when there's 16 or 1,700 people in the Performing Arts Center as opposed to like 900 or 1,000, you know? And our players, like our musicians, like I think kind of pick up on that. And then, of course, when there's that many people, they want to really bring their all and perform their best, which, of course, leads to a better concert and, of course, So it's just this really positive, you know, kind of, you know.
Snowball.
Yeah, exactly. It's a positive feedback loop. There you
Yes.
go. So
one of the things that we talk about with all the organizations, and I think people lose sight of when your core focuses, when the core product, in this case, it's the music, it's the performance, it's the performers, it's that experience. But that's not the only thing that the Philharmonic is about. It's a community organization. Tell us a little bit about some of the stuff that you do in the community, the collaborations that you've got, the shared experiences that go out beyond the safe credit union performance center.
You know, so generally speaking, we have 7 performance sets that we call our own, like the Sacramento Philharmonic and Opera presents or produces, you know, this orchestra concert or this opera concert. And then beyond that, we probably have, you know, at minimum 5 or 6 kind of other things that we're a part of. You know, so like every December we play the live music for all the Nutcracker performances with the ballet, which is just a lot of fun because
and we all know that because we took our kids there.
Right, exactly. So that's a great collaboration. You know, recently we've started to do in February around Valentine's Day, like another thing with the ballet. So, you know, Cinderella, Romeo and Juliet, those sorts of productions where the ballet is producing it and they're working with us to provide the live music. And, you know, it's kind of like opera where you see the singers and the set and everything and the players. You know, ballet similar. You see the dancers and the sets and everything and our players in the pit. So, you know, a collaboration like that, you know, between the Philharmonic and Opera and the ballet just makes a ton of sense. And it's a really, really great thing, certainly for us, because it's work for the musicians, for the ballet. Hopefully they agree because they get live music, which I think everyone agrees is better. And, you know, when somebody goes for the first time or the 100th time, you know, there's still a power and a really important beneficial thing of seeing what's happening on stage and hearing and seeing live music, you know? So the ballet certainly is one of them. You know, the last couple of years also, we've partnered with this touring organization who basically goes from market to market to produce these movie concerts. So, you know, Harry Potter, think of those sort of things, where this company will bring a big screen and they'll show a Harry Potter movie, you know, Sorcerer's Stone, Chamber of Secrets, Prisoner of Azkaban, things like that. And we'll have 80 of our players playing on stage, which is just really cool because it's classical music. I mean, if you listen to the music, John Williams knew what he was doing, but it's just in a little bit of a different idiom, like with a movie, as opposed to a piece that Beethoven played. And those are a little more popular pop sort of concerts, but they're still classical music. It's still musicians. It's certainly a different audience, which is great that we get to, kind of work with. In terms of other big time or kind of large orchestra collaborations, I think it's been 4 years now. I think it was 2015, 2019, 21, 23. We played with Andrea Bocelli when he came to Golden One. I guess it was Arco back in 15, but Golden One 19, 21, 23, which is really fun too because he's obviously Andrea Bocelli. Yes. And we have 70 of our musicians and 60 of our chorus members and 12,000 people in Golden One who come to see the combination of Andrea with his people and us. So that's a really great thing too. Back in 2021, we did a 4th of July concert at Sutter Health Park, kind of in partnership with the River Cats. So that was a really fun thing too that we did at the time. And then beyond that, we try to get out there as much as we can on the more, trio, quartet, quintet, more kind of chamber perspective. So, the last multiple years in a row, we have a brass group play at the Run to Feed the Hungry under a bus stop. I think it's by like 57th, I want to say.
Oh, fun. Motivational for the people coming
Yeah,
through.
well, and it's great. And it's
exposure.
like there's 30,000 people who run by that band and they take pictures and they make little videos and it just kind of adds some fun frivolity to the festivities. Yes. We'll play at libraries, whether it's in Sacramento or West Sacramento or Davis. We've played at the Children's Museum in Rancho Cordova before. We've played at the Coriana Plaza in Rancho Cordova before. And, again, these are a little more ad hoc. It's why they're called pop-up concerts. We played in the Rose Garden at the Capitol. We play at different coffee shops. So we try to get out there as much as we can kind of around, the concerts that we produce in these larger orchestra collaborations. But it's fun. I mean, even if we only get, 10 or 15 or 20 people, for those 10, 20 people, like it's still pretty fun and exciting. And then, all the way up to 12,000 to see Bocelli, but if we make someone's day and get to, expose them to the music that we're doing or just music in general, like that's a good thing.
No,
So
totally agreed. And not to mention, it's that different audience. It's that younger audience, which I would imagine is a focal point to start pulling in a younger audience. And not unlike yourself, as a great spokesperson, as a great steward. I mean, as I don't mean it literally, but look at me. I'm the face of the Philharmonic, and again, it's not a traditional face that one might expect to see.
Yeah, it's a really rewarding job. It's a hard job, but just the amount of impact, or just the level of impact that we can have for as many people as possible in the region, like it kind of makes it all worth it.
What about other organizations, not on the performing side of things, but people that you might work with collaboratively to either educate, or do you have tours from other nonprofits for their maybe disadvantaged students or other things that come through as exposure to and just awareness of?
Yeah, so I would say the main program kind of for that is called Link Up. Link Up. It's a Carnegie Hall program, or a program Carnegie Hall originally created specifically to address the kind of dwindling or the lack of music education opportunities in specifically 3rd through 5th grade or elementary schools in general. We've been doing that program, I want to say, since like 2009-10. I think we were one of the first, if not the first, or like an early adopter of the program on the West Coast. Basically, the way that program works, we will essentially lead professional development sessions for the teachers. Most of them happen like in September, October. Some of them can happen in kind of, early of the next calendar year. But basically, we will get the materials from Carnegie Hall for free, which is nice. We'll give them to the teachers, and then we'll teach the teachers the curriculum. The teachers then, in turn, can, in any manner they want, 30 minutes a week, 60 minutes twice a week, 90 minutes every day, whatever they can do, they will incorporate those teachings and those learnings into the classroom. So,
wonderful. And
it's a song and recorder-based program. So students learn how to sing simple melodies. They play, things on their recorder. And, every year the program ends March or April, normally March, where as many students as possible, come to the Performing Arts Center to play what they've learned with our musicians. So we'll have 70 of our players on stage, and, over the course of a couple days, 3 to 4 concerts, there will be 15 to 2,000 students like in the auditorium playing and dancing and singing. And it's just a lot of fun. I mean, 2,000 recorders playing sound there's not really anything like it. But man, is it cool. And there's a huge projector or a screen that plays above the orchestra that cycles through songs and games and things like that. So we're pretty consistently now impacting, 6,000 to 7,000 students, more or less.
Which is just wonderful.
From Sac City, San Juan, Elk Grove, Twin Rivers. Like, those are the biggest school partners that we have.
Yes.
And we talk to some parents and teachers and students for sure, and they're like, this field trip, and it is a field trip, is like one of the most fun things that they do every year. because when else can you get to go down to the Performing Arts Center and play anything, right, with a live orchestra, which is this, region's,
Yes.
professional organization. Um, and, again, they're not practicing for 2 hours every day. I mean, some of them get 30 minutes a week. But even then, it's something, that can help them get exposed to music, that can help with kind of other, developmental things that they're working on. Plus, it's fun repertoire. It changes. Some years it's jazz. Some years it's rock. Some years it's more kind of lyrical,
Oh.
classical. The last couple years, it was a jazz-based program. Because that's the one thing we, don't really do. Like, we play opera. We play orchestra music. We do ballet. We do pops. We do chamber. So jazz, not really. But again, like the last couple of years of Link Up, the program was the Orchestra Swings, which is a jazz program. So the students learn like Count Basie and Duke Ellington's song is when the Saints go marching in. So what's cool about that with us is we really kind of do a lot of different types of music. And for the kids or for the students, they get to see kind of different experiences and different genres depending on their age. But regardless, I mean, they get to learn a little bit of music. The teachers get some hands-on training, and everybody gets to have this really fun experience, every spring where there's some sort of live exposure to a live orchestra. And there's also, the teachers can say, hey, like if we practice, we'll get to go play this with, a professional group. And that's really fun too. So
Well, just the exposure and the knowledge that there's a possible career for me. There's
Right.
a possible thing I can do. I really loved this. You surely have turned some kids onto something over the course of this program.
Every once in a while, we'll get somebody who did Link Up, 10, 15 years ago at a concert and say, hey, I was in one of the first years of Link Up. Oh, cool. And now I'm at a concert. So, little stories like that are just really fun to hear. And I do think they kind of demonstrate or show that there is some sort of, connection between, what is happening, with Link Up or just in general with music education and kind of what that could lead to, like our patrons and attendees and things like that. So.
Before we get to how the Philharmonic and Opera are funded, let's take a brief intermission to hear from the people who make this program possible. I was in the media business for over 35 years and had the great privilege of working with Runyon Saltzman, RSE, Marketing, Advertising, and Public Relations. We collaborated on many different campaigns, but their commitment to the nonprofit sector hasn't changed since their founder, Gene Runyon, started the agency. Over many years and many campaigns, Runyon Saltzman has been committed to improving lives by tackling California's most challenging issues. Guided by research-informed strategies and insightful, creative solutions, RSE develops innovative communications campaigns that raise awareness, educate, and reduce stigma in diverse communities throughout our state and beyond. To learn more about RSE, visit rs-e.com.
Hello, this is Scott Thomas with Cap Trust in our Sacramento office. I specialize in working with local nonprofits and associations. Annually, we survey private and public nonprofit organizations across the country to better understand challenges they see in today's environment. In our more recent survey, we heard concerns about proper board governance, mission-aligned investment, and how to implement alternative investments. If you would like a copy of the survey or to discuss your organization, look me up, Scott Thomas at captrust.com.
I'm thrilled to have Western Health Advantage partnering with us as they do so much to support so many nonprofit agencies in our community. As a truly local health plan, you'll find individual and family options, employer options, plans for CalPERS and Medicare Advantage. From medical services to pharmacy, health and wellness support, as well as behavioral health care, Western Health Advantage has a plan that fits what you need. As an employer, for profit or nonprofit business, individual or family, you can find more at westernhealth.com. Budgeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fun stuff, right?
Uh-huh.
You mentioned the budget, but how are you funded? Where does the money actually come from? I mean, obviously there's ticket sales, but that's not probably, what, a third maybe?
Yeah, I mean, we're probably, depending on the year, about 65 or 70% fundraising based. So if we're a $3.4, $3.5 million organization, like, 1.9 to 2, has to come from philanthropy or annual donations or some government funding, things like that. So we're maybe 25 or 30% tickets and the rest, like contracted performances, fee for service, things like that. But definitely the large majority of how we're funded and why we exist, right, is through philanthropy. And if you just look at a pie chart of our overall revenue where you see 65 or 70% comes from donations, like they're really important. Now, what we do, I mean, I think certainly is a value add to the community. So we can definitely have like really fun conversations with, high level donors, major donors, principal donors, about, hey, 10,000, 25,000, 50, whatever, 100, whatever thousand. If you support that, it can go to the good of the order. It can go to sponsor a concert. It can go to sponsor an artist. It can go to underwrite something. It can go towards an education program. We just do a lot, which is great. So we can have these pretty robust conversations to really work with the donor to figure out what makes the most sense from a funding perspective. And that makes everything possible, And we certainly need ticket sales. We certainly need, other revenue streams that we have. But at the end of the day, like, this comes down to fundraising.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just lucky to be in a position that we can really talk about the value that if we get the right amount of donations, we can provide this value to the community.
And in a market that's growing, much to your advantage,
Yeah.
because you've got all these new people to expose to and
For sure.
converse with and
Yep.
and share the concepts and ideas that you've got.
Well, and the nice thing, I mean, we don't have a gala, for example, but I kind of joke that we have like several, because every time we produce a concert and people who support and buy tickets go and they see what's happening on stage, or they go to a pop-up, or they come to Link Up, or something else. I mean, every time someone watches us perform or practice even, like, they can see what their support is going towards. And that's just a really unique thing to the performing arts, So it's great.
People, I think, will sometimes confuse the musicians with the employees.
Mm-hmm.
So the musicians, the performers, they're not employees.
So the musicians actually are employees.
Of
Yep.
the organization?
So our musicians are employees. Yep. I mean, they're part-time employees, right?
Yes.
But they are employees. Guest artists, guest conductors, opera singers, directors, those are not employees. We'll have them come for a project anywhere from 3 days to 4 weeks, 3 days for an orchestra, 4 weeks for a longer opera. But the musicians themselves are, they're employees.
Even though they will travel from place to place to place. And then when they do that, when they go to perform and one of the other performing arts centers, whether it's Oakland, San Francisco, et cetera, is that independent to that organization?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
So they're almost like part-time employees over the course, and they can do whatever.
Exactly. So, we'll send everybody W-2s at the end of the year.
Yeah.
So they're legitimately employees.
Yeah.
And, like, we have a roster of, I think it's like 68 or 70 now musicians.
Plus your staff and admin.
Yeah, so we call the roster our staff musicians.
Gotcha.
So they're the ones who, depending on the program, get the offers. Violin 1s and 2s and cellos and flutes and things like that. And then if they can't make a performance, we go down. We have these different things called sublists. So if the main oboe or both oboes, can't come, we'll go down the sublist and just kind of go from the top. Great, who's the first call sub? Who's the second call sub? But any orchestra musician who plays for us is an employee.
Okay. So in that case, how many of them do you have total? So you've got 68, you said?
So 68, I guess, core players, you could maybe call them.
Uh-huh.
And again, depends on the year. We probably send out for the musicians between 180 and 220 W-2s every year. Since I've been here, it's probably not a stretch to say that we've employed somewhere in the maybe 650 like individual musicians. Now, obviously, some of them play everything. Some of them have played once in the course of the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
But if they play, and I think that's a big deal too, because they're like a legitimate part of the organization. Because again, if they're not there, we don't exist.
Right.
As an orchestra and opera performing arts organization. So it's around 180 to 220 pretty consistently now. In the aggregate, probably around 650, which is kind of a fun stat to be able to share,
Unless they think that, my gosh, he's got 650 people to worry about. But
Yeah,
it's really
well,
by performance as
yeah,
opposed to
well,
a salary of sorts.
Right. And we, again, if we have 7 concert sets plus Nutcracker plus maybe 3 other things, I mean, that basically is like 12 to 13 weeks, right? And generally, like, weeks, they're here Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday. So it's a relatively finite amount of time that they're here, right? And then, of course, the other work that we do is just to, get the concerts ready and get the programs ready so that when they show up,
Yes.
they can practice their best and get ready the best so they can put on their best performance.
So how many people are there then outside of musicians that are employed by the organization?
Yeah, so we have 9 staff currently, 8
Okay.
full-time, 1 part-time, which for our size is a good amount. And, we have key people in operations and community work and finance and development and box office and, executive stuff like myself
Yes.
and things like that. So we have kind of all the bases covered, which is good. And then not staff by any means, but we have a board of like 22 people. I want to say now. So, with all those musicians and all those, guest artists and, pretty big from the board perspective, volunteer base and legitimate professional staff, like all of this is kind of coming together, I think, to really, help us kick things up a notch with what we're doing, which is exciting.
And speaking of kicking it up a notch,
Uh-huh.
let's assume budget wasn't an issue. You didn't have to think about a budget. What would the organization look like? What would you do differently?
Yeah. Well, so, again, like we're known as the Sacramento Philharmonic and Opera, but our legal name is the Sacramento Region Performing Arts Alliance. And I've always loved that name, specifically the region part of it. And, as we've continued to, come back, in the last 10, because this is the 10-year anniversary currently. So as we've continued to come back and chart out the next future, like we've had to do certain things just to like move from, we talked about this, but move to stability.
Yes.
But I do think, as we continue on, seeing if there's potential to get more regional and play in different markets or different cities that maybe don't have a classical music vibe, or maybe go to different venues. You've got like venues like the Mondavi Center and the Harris Center, things like that. I think that could be kind of interesting. If budget weren't an issue, to kind of tap in more to that. Generally, our season goes from October through May, June sometimes, mainly October through May. I think becoming a little more of a year-round organization to do some stuff in the summertime, to have some sort of consistent presence, I think that could be great. We're starting to dabble with double concert sets. So rather than just doing a concert on Saturday, we can do a concert on Saturday and Sunday, or rather than an opera only on Saturday, we can do Friday night and Sunday afternoon. And those cost money, obviously, with risk. We'd have to make sure that the ticket buying base was there. Getting sponsorships would be important. But I think trying to find, the right performances that we could do double sets, right, where the musicians get more work, and we think there's enough interest for people to buy tickets and people to support them. I think that certainly could be good, because then, musicians are getting multiple concerts, they get more work, there's more chances for people to come from outside Sacramento to see shows, especially in the matinee. So I think the regional aspect is certainly something. I think the double concert aspect is something, and I think the kind of year-roundness of what we could be if budget were no object. I think that those could be some pretty interesting things. And then, of course, again, we certainly want to make sure that we, continue to pay the staff as well as we can. Certainly, again, the talent that we bring, they get fees.
Yes.
The musicians plus the stage crew union and the wardrobe union, they're unionized, so they get wages as well. So, of course, making sure that having the funds to be able to pay all those people. That's obviously something that we continue to try to do within our means, right? So I'd say that if budget were an object,
I love
that to me is a lot.
And I love that year-round concept. Just the ability to perform all year round, especially in this market where summertime is really big.
Right.
And the
Yeah,
ability
it's just
to be out.
it's so hot is the problem in the summertime, and again, like when it's 115, like you can't reasonably ask a musician to go out there in the beating sun with like a wood violin,
Or put their lips on a mouthpiece that's been singing.
For sure, right? So I think in the summertime, it requires some creativity, right? Whether it's in the morning or at night when the sun's gone down, or just an indoor venue with good air conditioning. But if money were no object, I think that certainly could be something that could be explored.
And on the flip side of that, back to the reality of budgets.
Right.
What is the greatest need you've got today?
I would say just more continued support. Again, if I think back to the most expensive thing that we do is opera, and man, it's an amazing art form, because again, when you have the orchestra and all the stuff on stage, the costumes, the lights, the super titles, the makeup, the wigs, the set, everything, it's just like there's nothing like a singer just like belting, like the apex of an aria, with orchestra playing full blast. It's just there's nothing else like it. And it's expensive, right? So, certainly opera is a really great and expensive art form. And again, even the orchestra stuff, like the musicians, there's costs. The stage crew, there's costs. The venue rental, there's costs. And tickets just don't really cut it. They never have for 300 years. So that's why really the kind of philanthropic piece is so important. Because the last thing we want to do is hit a high mark, and then because the support isn't there, go kind of
Backwards.
downhill.
Yeah.
And we really do have a lot of momentum right now, right? Which is really exciting. So people continuing to invest from a fundraising perspective, for the good of the order, for a sponsorship, for an endowment gift. At this point, we have a great board, and as we continue to think about growing the board, finding people who can really bring in those resources is certainly welcome. But I would say we have a really, really great kind of base of where we are right now, which, I mean, even the base is elevated, right? So continue to do that. We certainly need the resources, and then we'll keep trying to be as smart and strategic as much as we can to deploy those resources in the way that makes the most sense.
As we look at the seasons upcoming
Yeah.
and what you have in store, you mentioned that you're selling out most of the performances, which is
Right.
incredible.
Yeah.
And for those who are interested, I know one of the things that always comes up, what do we wear?
Oh, yeah.
What does one wear?
Yeah.
I mean, is this a formal event? I got to get a tuxedo
Yeah.
out, and my wife's got to wear a gown. I mean, what is it? What's happened
Yeah.
today? What's happening today?
Anything goes. I mean, certainly some people wear tuxes, some people wear ball gowns, some people wear suits
All at the
and
same
ties.
performance.
Yeah, totally. And then some people wear, t-shirts and sweatpants and jeans and it doesn't matter, right? Like I would never want someone to not come to a concert because, oh, no, am I too stuffy? Am I not? It's just like, no,
Right.
like you can come as you are, no problem. We totally want people just to, be comfortable in the space. And be able to sit there and enjoy the music and have a good time and get a drink and get some food afterwards and do whatever, and not feel, oh my gosh, like I'm uncomfortable because I'm not dressed appropriately. So people can wear anything, like totally, ball gowns, tuxedos, dresses, and on the other hand,
The opposite.
yeah, again, like sweats and flip-flops and a shirt doesn't matter at all, sure, Listen, there are some instances where I would love to do that, right, for a concert. When we're performing, I can't really do that. But, again, people want to be comfortable, and we want people to be comfortable in that space as they listen to music. So we basically tell folks, like, whatever you want to wear, if you want to make it a date night and dress up all fancy, that's awesome, go for it. And if you want to have a little more of a subdued, jeans and tenny sort of thing, that's fine too. We just want people to come and enjoy themselves.
And enjoy themselves. It's
Yeah.
the experience, not so much the the cosmetic of it all.
Totally.
On that note,
Mhm.
have you seen an appreciative change in the age of the audience? Are you starting to see more youth? And I don't mean youth, teenage and
Yeah.
high school and collegiate, but young adults now engaging with the
Yeah,
Philharmonic.
I think so. It's a little more of a gut feeling from what I'm seeing, not necessarily like we're running all sorts of sophisticated data analysis, things like that. And of course, I mean, the core of who comes is still, let's say 60s and up. But yeah, I mean, I do think I am starting to see, for the main performances that we have, the orchestra and the opera concerts, more folks in their 30s and 40s or young families. More younger people are donating, which is fun too. And I asked them just, why do you come? What's of interest? Beethoven is Beethoven, right? And I think especially if they know just a little bit about kind of the music and what they're looking forward to and kind of what the night could be, I think that's a big deal. And, we try to, maybe not officially, but, we try to encourage folks to make a whole night of it, right? So if you want to get a drink at 5 o'clock, you can do so. Get dinner at 6. Concert at 7:30 isn't too late, but late enough that you can do that and then go to the show and get a drink during intermission. And then, after the performance, if you want to go get a nightcap and then go home. Or just
spend the night downtown.
Yeah, get a hotel room, get brunch next day. I mean, there's a lot of different things that can be done kind of around the concert experience. Both for people in Sacramento and for anybody coming from outside. So if you want to come, to Sacramento 3 or 4 o'clock on a Saturday and then end up leaving at noon the next day, like you can do that centered around one of our performances. And I think kind of that approach with people that I talk to who are a little younger, it's not just, okay, I'm going to a concert, great. It's, ooh, what a fun day that we can have by seeing people and going with friends and seeing who's there at the concert hall and, having a fun time with folks and getting good food and seeing great music or listening to great music. I think that's worked pretty well in our favor to, certainly entice folks my age, 30s, 40s, to come, which is great. And listen, there's also folks in their 80s and 90s who do all that as well, right?
Yes.
Like they do the whole rigmarole. They go to dinner and they have their spot and they hear the music and they've had their tickets for 40 years and then they go home, so it's great. We just try to make it fun. And if nothing else, what we try to tell people when they ask is you can make this a really enjoyable, 24-hour period if you're so inclined, or at least you can do a few other things besides just going to the concert.
Right.
To really kind of build out that holistic experience around the performance.
What's the best way to learn not only about the performances, but if I wanted to engage with the organization, where do I go?
Yeah, so our website's sacphilopera.org. We certainly have information about concerts, education programs, what we have coming up. We pretty actively send out emails as well. You can join our email list on our website. So we try to send out information about obviously the concerts, but also, hey, we're playing with Nutcracker. Hey, we have Link Up. Hey, we have this thing coming up. And then same with social media. Follow us on social media. Buy tickets. I mean, that's probably honestly the best way.
Get you in the database.
Get in the database. Get in the door to come see a concert, because generally, like, that's the real first thing. Like, if someone buys a ticket and they go see the music and kind of feel what it's like, in my experience, they've been able to tell like what that quality is. And then once they come once, if they go again, right? Okay, now they've attended multiple concerts. Now we've got something with that person. And again, we try to make them really fun. The concerts are at 7:30. Operas can be a little bit longer, but generally the orchestra concerts are 70, 80 minutes of music plus intermission. We try to be really cognizant of length of program, so we're not ending too late, so people leave feeling good and wanting more. They're just really fun experiences, So website, social, buy a ticket, make a donation, get in the system, read the stuff, obviously. But I think really going to the website and buying a ticket, right, is really probably the best thing I can say. And we have student tickets for $10 too, in case a student wants to go. We certainly try to work with people if we can or as we need to get in the door. We try to be as accessible as possible. But website and ticket, those are really probably the ways to do it.
And I will put those on the show notes as well. So if anybody's looking or listening and they don't have time, they can see it in the show notes. I'll have a link there for you. Giuliano, what an enlightening conversation. I've learned a lot.
Oh,
just
great.
Because it's stuff I don't do on a regular basis.
Oh, it's fun.
But the arts have so much to say about a community, and they make such a bold statement. And the fact that they're supported by the community predominantly means even more about the community.
Right.
And for us to have not only the Philharmonic, the orchestra, the opera, and have it all under one roof in an incredible new facility in the Safe Credit Union Performance Art Safe Credit Union Performing Arts Center.
I call it the Safe Pack for short. Obviously the city and Safe like when the full thing is said.
Give them credit. They paid a lot of money for it.
Right. Exactly. I call it the Pack for short, but the Safe Pack certainly I think is the proper acronym there.
But it's so wonderful to sit across somebody with the energy and the vibrancy and the interest in what it is.
Thank you.
Sustaining it in our community. So for taking the time today, I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, again, for me, it's always really fun to be able to talk about kind of what we do and why it's important, kind of what's happening with the organization. So if nothing else, I certainly appreciate the forum and the time.
Well, thank you. Thank you for listening to the Nonprofit Podcast Network. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If what you heard moved you, please reach out to that organization and do what you can to help. If you like and appreciate what we're doing to support local nonprofits, please give us a positive review, subscribe, and share. If you're a nonprofit with an interest in participating in an episode, you can reach me at jeff@hearmenowstudio.com. If you have a need for the services or products our sponsors offer, please reach out to them. CapTrust, fiduciary advice for endowments and foundations, Runyon Saltzman Incorporated, RSE, marketing, advertising, and public relations, creating integrated communications committed to improving lives, and Western Health Advantage, a full-service healthcare plan for individuals, employer groups, and families. The Nonprofit Podcast Network is a production of, is recorded at, and edited by Hear Me Now Studio.